Beloved chosen one, listen carefully. Doubt does not appear randomly. It does not rise when you are weak, lost, or insignificant. Doubt shows up when you are about to step into something that carries weight, authority, and consequence. You have felt it, haven't you? That strange hesitation creeping in right when clarity was forming. That inner voice asking, "Are you sure you're ready?" That sudden questioning of everything you once felt certain about. This is not coincidence. This is divine timing colliding with spiritual resistance. You are not meant to blend in. You were never designed to walk quietly through life unnoticed. From the beginning, you have carried an awareness that set you apart. Even when you tried to ignore it, it followed you. Even when you attempted to shrink, it pressed against your spirit. Doubt appears now because what is coming next requires authority, and authority demands exposure. Darkness never fights what poses no threat. Resistance does not waste energy on the irrelevant. The fact that doubt has risen is proof that heaven is preparing to release something through you. Pay attention. Doubt is not the absence of faith. It is the pressure point where faith is about to be upgraded. Right before authority is released, the mind is tested, not because God is unsure of you, but because you must become sure of who He is in you. This is the moment where many turn back, second guess, or delay. But delay is the enemy's favorite weapon. He doesn't need to destroy you if he can simply slow you down long enough for fear to speak louder than truth. You've been here before. Opportunities that felt heavy, decisions that carried eternal weight, moments where obedience would cost comfort. Each time, doubt tried to disguise itself as wisdom. It whispered caution when courage was required. It asked you to wait when heaven was saying move. And every time you listened to doubt, you felt the quiet grief of knowing you stepped away from something sacred. This time is different. This time, the awareness is sharper. You can feel that something irreversible is near. You are standing at the edge of authority. Authority over fear. Authority over cycles that have repeated in your family line. Authority over the voice that once controlled you. But authority cannot be released into a vessel that still negotiates with doubt. This is why the pressure feels intense. This is why emotions feel amplified. This is why old insecurities are resurfacing. They are being exposed so they can no longer rule you, as was proclaimed in the second letter to Timothy. Chapter 1, verse 7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind. Notice what renews strength here. Not striving, not overthinking, hope in the Lord. Authority flows from alignment, not exhaustion. You do not gain power by proving yourself. You receive power by trusting the one who called you. When hope is anchored in Him, doubt loses its grip. When hope is anchored in outcomes, doubt multiplies. This is why heaven is calling you back to trust, not performance. Right now, there is a quiet test unfolding. Will you allow doubt to interpret your circumstances, or will you allow God's voice to define them? Doubt says, "You don't have enough." God says, "I am enough." Doubt says, "You've failed too many times," and God says, "I refine whom I intend to use." Doubt says, "You should wait until you feel ready." God says, "Follow me, and readiness will meet you on the way." Do not misunderstand this moment. This is not punishment. This is preparation. Authority is never handed to those who avoid pressure. It is entrusted to those who learn to stand steady while everything inside them is being questioned. This is where leaders are separated from followers. This is where the chosen are distinguished from the crowd. Many are invited, but few are willing to walk through the discomfort of transformation. You may feel alone in this season, but isolation is often the training ground for authority. Noise fades so discernment can sharpen. Familiar voices quiet so you can recognize God's. If people have misunderstood you lately, if support has thinned, if conversations feel shallow, it is because you are transitioning. Authority changes how others relate to you. Not everyone can walk with you where you are going. Listen carefully now. Don't do it, no matter the price. Don't abandon this moment. Don't retreat into old habit. Don't self-sabotage because growth feels unfamiliar. This is not coincidence. This is divine intervention. Heaven is pressing pause on distractions so you can make a clear decision. Will you agree with doubt, or will you agree with your calling? Right before authority is released, the cost becomes visible. Comfort will be threatened. Old identities will crack. You will be tempted to choose familiarity over destiny. This is where many lose ground. But you are still here. You are still listening. That means grace is active. Conviction is present. The door is not closed. If this message is resonating deep within you, take a moment now, like the video. Share it with someone who needs confirmation, and subscribe so you stay connected to what God is unfolding through this channel. And as a prophetic act of alignment, at the end of this section, comment the number 77 to declare that you choose trust over doubt and authority over fear. You begin to notice a pattern once you stop blaming yourself for the resistance. It is not random that opposition has followed you. It is not accidental that misunderstanding finds you before recognition ever does. Resistance targets you first because authority always attracts pressure before it attracts honor. Those who are marked to lead are tested in obscurity long before they are trusted in visibility. What you are experiencing now is not rejection, it is exposure to weight. From early on, you sensed that you carried something others did not. Not superiority, but responsibility. You felt things deeper. You noticed injustice quicker. You questioned systems others accepted without thought. That awareness made life harder, not easier. And because of it, resistance learned your name early. Authority has a scent before you ever speak with power. The environment reacts to what you carry. This is why you have often been challenged before you were celebrated. Why your motives were questioned while others were applauded for doing less. Why you were held to higher standards without being given higher support. Authority is expensive, and the price is often paid in isolation. The resistance you face is not proof that you are wrong, it is proof that you are early. You must understand this clearly. Darkness studies potential. It does not wait until you are fully formed. It attempts to interrupt you in the developmental stage, when confidence is still fragile and identity is still forming. That is why resistance comes before results. That is why criticism shows up before confirmation. That is why attacks often feel premature. The enemy is not responding to who you are now, but to who you are becoming. Many around you cannot articulate why they feel uneasy about you. Your presence challenges comfort zones without trying. Your questions expose shallow foundations. Your refusal to conform highlights compromise in others. Resistance is often born from insecurity, not from truth. But instead of allowing it to harden you, it is meant to refine you. Authority that has never been resisted becomes reckless. Authority that has been tested becomes disciplined. There is a reason leaders are forged, not found. Pressure reveals fractures that must be healed before authority is released, if unchecked. Small cracks would collapse under the weight of influence. So resistance comes first, not to stop you, but to show you where strengthening is still needed. Every conflict you endure is revealing something, either about the environment you are in, or about the areas within you that must mature. You may have wondered why life seemed to push back harder when you decided to live with integrity. Why choosing truth cost you relationships. Why obedience led to loss before it led to peace. Authority rearranges priorities. It demands alignment. And alignment often disrupts systems built on convenience. Resistance is the echo of disruption. It is the sound of old structures realizing they cannot control you anymore. The mistake many make is internalizing resistance as personal failure. They assume something is wrong with them, rather than recognizing that something is right with their calling. You were never meant to be easily digestible. You were designed to shift atmospheres, not soothe them. Authority does not blend in. It stands out, and standing out attracts friction. This is why your training has been uncomfortable. Why shortcuts were denied to you while others seem to advance effortlessly. You are being taught endurance, discernment, and restraint. These are not glamorous skills, but they are essential. Authority without restraint becomes tyranny. Authority without discernment becomes manipulation. Authority without endurance collapses under pressure. Heaven is meticulous about what it entrusts to you, as the apostle reminds us in the second letter to Timothy, chapter 3, verse 12. In fact, everyone who wants to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. This is not a threat, it is clarity. Resistance is not an anomaly, it is a confirmation. If you were walking a path of least resistance, it would mean you were not challenging anything that needed changing. Authority does not grow in comfort. It grows where conviction meets cost. Notice how resistance often intensifies right before transition. Just before new doors open, old ones slam loudly. Just before clarity comes, confusion spikes. This is not chaos, it is compression. Pressure is applied to see whether you will compromise or crystallize. Many abandon their calling here, mistaking discomfort for disqualification. But you are being trained to hold steady when everything shakes. You are learning not to react to every attack, not to explain yourself to every critic, not to seek validation from those who do not understand your assignment. Authority requires silence at times. Restraint is power under control. Every time you choose patience over retaliation, you are exercising authority before it is officially recognized. What feels like resistance is also redirection. Certain paths are closing because they cannot sustain the weight you will carry. Certain relationships are fading because they were built for an earlier version of you. Authority demands new structures. Old wineskins cannot hold new wine. This pruning is painful, but it is purposeful. You are not being targeted because you are weak. You are being targeted because you are effective. Even in preparation, your obedience disrupts patterns. Even in silence, your alignment threatens systems built on fear. Authority is already forming within you, even if it has not yet been announced. Do not rush this season. Do not despise it. Resistance is not your enemy, it is your instructor. Every lesson you learn here will protect you later. Every boundary you establish now will preserve your integrity when influence increases. Authority released too early would crush you. Authority released at the right time will crown you. You are not behind. You are being built. You are now confronted with something more subtle than resistance, more dangerous than opposition. It is delay. Not the kind imposed by circumstances, but the kind born inside the mind. Delay rarely announces itself as fear. It often disguises itself as logic, preparation, or wisdom. It sounds reasonable. It feels responsible. But its true purpose is to erode momentum right before authority takes shape. This is the hidden pattern you were meant to recognize. Every time clarity rises, delay follows. Every time conviction sharpens, hesitation steps in. You tell yourself you just need more time, more confirmation, more stability. But deep down, you know this is not about readiness. It is about avoiding the cost of movement. Delay keeps you safe from failure, but it also keeps you distant from authority. Authority is not released to those who feel ready. It is released to those who move while still trembling. Delay teaches you to negotiate with calling instead of obeying it. And the longer you negotiate, the louder doubt becomes. Momentum is spiritual. When it is interrupted, confidence leaks. Vision blurs. What once felt clear becomes foggy, not because God changed his mind, but because delay dulls perception. You have lived this cycle before. You sensed direction, then waited. You felt urgency, then postponed. You knew what to do, but chose to observe instead of act. And over time, the fire cooled. Passion faded into memory. You told yourself the season passed, when in reality, obedience was postponed. Delay does not cancel destiny immediately, it weakens it slowly. This is why delay is more effective than direct attack. Direct attack forces a decision. Delay allows indecision to masquerade as patience, but patience is anchored in trust, while delay is anchored in fear of loss. Patience moves when instructed. Delay waits until control feels guaranteed. Authority cannot coexist with control. It requires surrender. You are learning that delay always demands a justification. It needs a reason to survive. It borrows from wisdom language. It says, "Not yet," instead of "never." But repeated "not yet" eventually becomes disobedience dressed as discernment. And every delayed step trains the mind to hesitate again. Authority requires decisiveness, even when outcomes are uncertain. This is where many who are called fall short, not because they lack faith, but because they overthink obedience. They want assurance before movement. They want clarity before commitment. But clarity often comes after the step, not before it. Delay keeps you waiting for a version of certainty that does not exist in the realm of authority. Consider how often delay appears right before breakthrough, right before speaking up, right before leaving what is familiar, right before committing fully. The closer you are to alignment, the stronger the temptation to pause. Delay is the final filter. It reveals whether your trust is intellectual or embodied. Authority is not an idea you agree with, it is a posture you live from. The ancient words recorded in the book of Proverbs, chapter 29, verse 18, still echo today where there is no vision. The people perish. Vision does not perish only when it is absent. It perishes when it is postponed. Vision demands motion. When movement stops, vision decays. Delay starves vision of oxygen. And without vision, authority becomes reactive instead of directive. You were never meant to react to life. You were meant to lead within it. Delay also distorts identity. The longer you wait, the more you forget who you were becoming. You start adapting to the environment instead of transforming it. You lower expectations to avoid disappointment. You shrink language to avoid accountability. Authority requires agreement between identity and action. Delay fractures that agreement. You may feel tension right now as this truth lands. That tension is not condemnation, it is awakening. You are realizing how many times delay has cost you momentum. But this awareness is mercy. Recognition precedes restoration. You are not being accused, you are being invited back into movement. This is the moment where you must choose differently, not dramatically, not loudly, but decisively. Authority often begins with a quiet yes that cannot be undone. One step, one act of obedience, one refusal to postpone what you already know to do. This is how momentum is rebuilt. To seal this recognition, Take a moment to comment the phrase "no more delay." This is not a slogan. It is a declaration. It means you are no longer negotiating with what God has already made clear. It signals that you understand delay has been a pattern and that patterns can be broken. Writing it anchors intention into action. It marks a shift from hesitation into alignment. Delay loses power when it is exposed. Authority grows when action resumes. You are not behind. You are at a threshold. And what you do next matters more than what you delayed before. What you have been fighting internally was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to shape you. Authority is not handed out as a reward for good behavior. It is forged in the quiet, unseen places where inner conflict forces truth to rise. This is the part few talk about: the season where nothing external changes, yet everything inside you is being confronted. This is where authority is either formed or forfeited. Inner conflict feels confusing because it exposes contradictions you didn't know you carried. You believe, yet you fear. You obey, yet you hesitate. You trust, yet you still want control. These tensions are not signs of failure, they are signs of refinement. Authority cannot be built on denial. It must be built on integration, where faith and fear meet, and fear loses its throne. You once thought authority came from confidence alone, but confidence without depth collapses under pressure. True authority comes from having faced your own darkness and choosing not to be ruled by it. Every unresolved fear would later exploit your position. Every unhealed wound would eventually leak into leadership. That is why this inner war is necessary. God loves you too much to release authority that would later wound you or others. You are learning to sit with discomfort instead of running from it, to listen instead of react, to discern instead of defend. These skills are invisible, but they are foundational. Authority is not loud. It does not rush. It stands grounded even when emotions surge. Inner conflict teaches you restraint, and restraint is power under control. There were moments you questioned yourself deeply, nights where silence felt heavy, times when you wondered if you misunderstood your calling. But in those moments, something subtle was happening. Your dependence was shifting. You were learning not to lean on feelings, validation, or outcomes, but on truth. Authority rests on truth, not emotion. Inner conflict also reveals motive. Why do you want authority? For recognition, for safety, for control, or for service? Conflict strips away illusions. It removes impure ambition. It humbles ego. What survives the fire is what can be trusted. Authority released without purified motive becomes self-serving. Authority forged through surrender becomes transformational. You may have felt exposed emotionally, spiritually, mentally. Old memories resurfacing, old patterns knocking again. This is not regression. This is excavation. What was buried must be addressed before authority can stand on solid ground. Suppressed issues resurface not to shame you, but to free you. Authority requires wholeness, not perfection. As the ancient words recorded in Romans chapter 5, verse 3, still echo today. Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance is the backbone of authority, not talent, not charisma. Perseverance, the ability to remain steady when answers are delayed, when affirmation is absent, when progress feels invisible. Inner conflict trains perseverance. It teaches you to stay when leaving would be easier, to believe when proof is lacking, to obey when applause is silent. This is why shortcuts were closed to you, why certain doors did not open even when you prayed. Authority forged too quickly fractures. You are being strengthened slowly so you can stand long term. What feels like delay is actually depth. What feels like struggle is stability being built. Notice how your reactions are changing. You no longer respond as quickly. You pause. You weigh. You choose words carefully. Danoda, this is not weakness. This is authority taking shape. Power that reacts is dangerous. Power that discerns is trusted. You are becoming someone who can carry weight without being crushed by it. Inner conflict also teaches compassion. You become less judgmental because you understand complexity, less rigid because you've wrestled yourself. Authority without compassion becomes harsh. Authority with compassion becomes healing. You are being prepared not just to lead, but to restore. If this message is helping you see your season differently, take a quiet moment to support this work like the video if it resonates. Share it with someone walking through their own inner battle, and subscribe so you stay connected as this journey unfolds. Not out of obligation, but out of alignment. You are not breaking. You are being built. The fire you feel is not meant to consume you, but to refine you. Authority is not coming despite this inner conflict, it is coming because of it. There comes a moment that feels quieter than the battles before it, yet heavier than anything you've faced so far. This is not the season of resistance from others, nor the chaos of inner conflict. This is the moment when heaven tests your yes. Not your words, not your intention, your yes. Authority does not activate its intention, it activates its surrender. You have already proven endurance. You stayed when leaving was easier. You learned when resisting was tempting. You refined motives that once were mixed. Now the question is no longer, can you survive pressure? The question is, will you obey without negotiation? This is where authority either locks into place or remains dormant. The test is subtle. It doesn't arrive with thunder. It comes as a simple instruction that costs something real. A letting go, a step forward, a release of control. Often, it contradicts logic. It may threaten comfort, security, or reputation. This is why it is a test. Authority answers to alignment, not convenience. Many believe their biggest test will look dramatic. In truth, the most decisive moments are quiet. A decision made alone, an obedience no one applauds, a sacrifice no one notices. Heaven watches these moments closely. This is where crowns are weighed. You may feel a strange tension now. Less confusion, more clarity, yet more weight. That weight is responsibility. Authority is not excitement, it is accountability. When heaven asks for your yes, it is asking if you are willing to carry what comes next without returning it when it becomes heavy. This is why partial obedience has been exposed in you, not to shame you, but to prepare you. Partial obedience delays authority because it keeps control in your hands. Full obedience transfers control to God. Authority cannot flow through a vessel that still reserves the right to retreat. You are not being asked for perfection. You are being asked for availability. A yes that does not come with conditions. A yes that does not say, I will obey if it makes sense. A yes that says, I will obey because you spoke. This is where many hesitate, not because they don't love God, but because they fear loss more than they trust gain. Authority always demands loss first, loss of image, loss of certainty, loss of familiar ground. But what is lost is never equal to what is gained. What leaves your hand makes room for what must rest upon your life. Heaven has been patient with you. Warnings came gently. Conviction came early. Delay was allowed for growth, but now, the invitation is direct. This is not a season to revisit old debates. This is not a time to ask for more sign. You already know. Clarity is present. The test is not informational, It is relational. As Jesus himself declared in the Gospel of Matthew, the chapter 7, verse 21, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven." This is not about salvation, it is about authority. Saying yes with words is easy. Doing the will requires alignment of action. Authority responds to action. Heaven releases power where obedience is demonstrated, not where intentions are stored. You may sense urgency now, but not panic. This is different. Panic comes from fear. Urgency comes from purpose. You are aware that this moment matters, that something irreversible is attached to your response. This awareness is a gift. It means you are awake. Your yes may require stepping out before resources appear. Authority often brings provision after obedience, not before it. If provision came first, faith would not be required. And without faith, authority would rest on sight, not trust. Do not underestimate the power of a quiet yes. It rearranges timelines. It accelerates what was waiting. It silences accusations. It ends cycles of delay. When you say yes fully and without conditions, authority does not need to announce itself. It begins operating immediately. You might be tempted to over-spiritualize this moment, to make it abstract. But obedience is practical. It shows up in choices, in conversations, in boundaries, in steps taken even when emotions resist. Authority does not live in theory. It lives in follow-through. This is also where fear tries one last time. Not loud fear, reasonable fear. Fear that sounds like responsibility. Fear that asks, what if this costs too much but authority answers? What if obedience costs less than disobedience? The greatest losses in your life were not from obedience, they were from hesitation. Heaven is not demanding, it is inviting. But invitations expire not because God withdraws, but because seasons shift. This is why discernment matters now. You are not being rushed, you are being positioned. To seal your response to mark this moment of agreement. Comment the number 999. This number represents completion and transition, the end of negotiation and the beginning of obedience. It is not superstition. It is symbolic alignment. By writing it, you acknowledge that your yes is no longer theoretical. It is active. Authority is not coming someday. It is waiting for agreement today. And heaven already knows your answer before you speak it, but your spirit must catch up with what God has already decided about you. There is a reason the story of Gideon has followed you, even if you did not realize it. His journey mirrors the precise crossing you are standing in now, the passage from fear into command, from hiding into authority. Gideon did not begin as a warrior. He did not see himself as a leader. He did not wake up believing he would command armies. He began where many chosen ones begin hiding, doubting, surviving. Gideon was found in a winepress, threshing wheat in secret, not because he was lazy, but because fear had trained him to stay small. The Midianites had stripped the land, stolen harvests, and conditioned the people of God to expect loss. Gideon adapted. He learned how to survive under pressure without being seen. That survival instinct kept him alive, but it could never release authority. And yet, heaven addressed him not according to his behavior, but according to his calling. The angel did not say, "You fearful man," he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." That title clashed violently with Gideon's self-image. Authority often arrives with language you do not yet recognize as yours. God speaks to who you are becoming, not who you have been rehearsing in fear. Gideon questioned immediately. He pointed to circumstances. He asked why oppression existed if God was present. This was not rebellion, it was honesty. Authority does not require silence, it requires truth. Gideon's questions revealed something important despite fear. His heart was still engaged. He had not numbed himself to injustice. He still cared. That sensitivity, once refined, would become leadership. When God called Gideon to save Israel, his response exposed the second layer of fear identity. He did not argue about God's power. He argued about his own insignificance. His clan was weak. He was the least. This is where many remain stuck, not doubting God's ability, but disqualifying themselves. Authority stalls when identity refuses alignment. But God did not debate Gideon's resume. He gave him presence. I will be with you. Authority is not built on personal strength. It is anchored in divine companionship. Gideon was never meant to win because he was strong. He was meant to win because he obeyed. The first command Gideon received was not military, it was personal. Tear down your father's altar to Baal. Before public authority, private allegiance must be settled. This step was terrifying. It risked reputation, safety, and family approval. Gideon obeyed at night, still afraid, but obedience does not require the absence of fear. It requires movement despite it. That act marked the beginning of transformation. Fear no longer had veto power. From there, the calling escalated. Gideon gathered an army, but God reduced it deliberately. 32,000 became 10,000. 10,000 became 300. This was not strategy, it was separation. God was stripping Gideon of false confidence. Authority that depends on numbers will collapse when numbers fall. Authority that depends on God remains steady regardless of scale. Imagine the internal conflict. Less soldiers, greater enemy, higher stakes. This is where many would retreat. But Gideon had already crossed the threshold. His obedience had recalibrated his courage. He no longer needed to feel powerful. He needed to remain aligned. Before battle, God allowed Gideon one final reassurance, not to encourage fear, but to anchor faith. Gideon overheard an enemy dream predicting defeat. This was not coincidence, it was confirmation. Authority does not silence fear by force, it replaces fear with evidence of alignment. Once Gideon heard it, something settled. He worshipped before the victory ever manifested, as recorded in the book of Judges, chapter 6, verse 12. The Lord is with you, mighty warrior. That sentence carried Gideon through everything that followed. Not his feelings and not his past, not his limitations. Presence defined authority, and once Gideon accepted that identity, action followed naturally. He gave commands, he trusted timing, he led decisively. The man who once hid now spoke with clarity. The battle itself was unconventional. No swords at first, just obedience. Jars broken, torches revealed, trumpets sounded. Authority does not always look like force. Sometimes it looks like precision. God fought the battle, but Gideon still had to step forward. Authority is partnership. The enemy collapsed into confusion. Victory came not from strength, but from obedience multiplied by trust. And Gideon's authority was established not because he became fearless, but because fear no longer ruled him. This is why his story matters now. You may feel closer to the winepress than the battlefield. You may identify more with hiding than commanding. But authority does not wait for confidence. It grows through obedience. Gideon did not transform overnight. He crossed gradually from survival to obedience to command. Your story is unfolding the same way. Fear has taught you to minimize yourself. Delay has trained you to hesitate. But obedience is retraining you to lead. Authority is no longer theoretical. It is being practiced in real time. Gideon's name did not change, but his posture did. And posture determines authority. When you stop asking permission from fear, authority recognizes you. You are not late. You are not disqualified. You are mid-transformation. You are no longer standing where you once stood. Even if your environment looks familiar, something irreversible has shifted within you. This is the stage few reach the moment after the trial, when authority is no longer theoretical but confirmed, not announced with noise, not validated by crowds, confirmed by endurance. Authority is revealed after you survive what was meant to silence you. You remember how doubt appeared before everything changed, how fear tried to speak louder than calling, how delay tempted you to pause, how inner conflict tested your motives, how obedience demanded your yes without guarantees. You crossed all of it, not perfectly but faithfully, and that is why authority can now rest on you without crushing you. The crown is not given at the beginning. It is revealed at the end of resistance. Crowns are not symbols of privilege, they are symbols of responsibility. What you carry now is weightier than excitement. It is clarity. You see differently. You respond differently. You are no longer driven by reaction but guided by discernment. That is authority. Authority changes how you walk into rooms. You no longer need to announce yourself. You no longer need to convince. Presence speaks. Silence holds power. You've learned that not every battle requires engagement, and not every voice deserves response. This restraint is not passivity, it is mastery. There was a time when validation fueled you. Now, alignment does. There was a time when approval mattered. Now, obedience does. This shift marks the difference between gifted and entrusted. Gifts attract attention. Authority attracts trust. Heaven entrusts those who have proven they will not misuse power to heal old wounds or inflate old insecurities. You are also learning that authority does not remove vulnerability. It redeems it. You remember what fear felt like, so you lead with compassion. You remember confusion, so you guide with patience. You remember isolation, so you create space for others. This is why your authority will not dominate, it will restore. The crown revealed now is not visible to everyone. Some will still see you as you were. Some will resist the change because it disrupts their expectations. Let them. Authority does not require consensus. It requires alignment. The ones meant to recognize it will. The ones who don't were never meant to follow where you're going. This is where many stumble when authority arrives quietly instead of dramatically. They expect fireworks. But heaven releases authority as stability, as peace under pressure, as clarity in chaos, as the ability to stand firm when everything shakes. This is the mark you carry now. Do not rush to display it. Authority does not need to prove itself. It proves itself over time, through consistency, through integrity, through decisions made when no one is watching. You are not crowned for a moment, you are crowned for a lifetime of stewardship. You will notice something else: battles change. You no longer fight the same things. Old temptations lose their pull. Old fears lose their voice. New challenges arise, but they are different in nature. They require wisdom, not survival. Discernment, not defense. This is how you know authority has shifted. The Spirit spoke through the prophet Jeremiah, chapter 1, verse 10. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant. Notice the order. Tearing down comes before building. You have lived that sequence. Old patterns uprooted, old identities dismantled, false foundations destroyed. Now comes planting. building, establishing what will outlast you. Authority is not about influence today. It is about legacy tomorrow. You are now a carrier. What you speak carries weight. What you tolerate shapes environments. What you refuse protects futures. This is why discernment matters more than ever. Authority multiplies impact, both good and bad. But you have been trained. The fire refined you. The pressure strengthened you. The obedience aligned you. There will be moments when you are tempted to minimize what you carry, to return to old humility patterns that were actually fear in disguise. True humility does not deny authority, it submits it to God daily. Do not shrink what heaven expanded. Steward it with reverence. You are also not meant to walk this alone. Authority attracts community, not crowds, but covenant connections. Those who recognize the weight you carry and do not try to compete with it. Those who sharpen, not drain. Protect these relationships. Authority flourishes in healthy alignment. If this message has walked with you through the journey from doubt to authority and you sense it confirming what God has already been speaking to you, I invite you gently and sincerely to support this work. Like the video so it reaches others standing at the same threshold. Share it with someone who needs confirmation that the struggle was not wasted. And subscribe, not just to a channel, but to a continued flow of messages meant to strengthen those who are called to carry weight. You did not imagine this journey. You did not exaggerate the resistance. You were not weak. You are becoming strong in the only way that lasts. Authority is no longer ahead of you. It is operating through you now. The crown was never lost. It was waiting for you to grow into it. You have reached the edge of the message, but not the edge of the journey. What you have heard is not meant to close anything, it is meant to stay with you, like a quiet echo, like a question that follows you into your next decision. Authority does not always announce itself with finality. Sometimes it leaves space, because space is where choice lives. You now carry language for what you've been sensing. You understand why doubt appeared, why resistance intensified, why obedience cost you more than you expected. Not everything was explained, and that is intentional. Some understanding only arrives when you begin to walk differently. Revelation continues through movement. Nothing more is being demanded of you in this moment. No pressure, no urgency, just awareness. Awareness that something has shifted. Awareness that you are no longer who you were when you began listening. Awareness that authority grows quietly when it is stewarded well. You don't need to rush to apply this. Let it settle. Let it surface naturally in conversations, decisions, boundaries, and courage. Authority integrates slowly. It reshapes instincts. It rewires reflexes. It teaches you when to speak and when silence carries more weight. If this message resonated, if it helped you name something sacred and difficult, you are welcome to respond in whatever way feels honest. Some will sit quietly with it. Some will pass it along. Some may choose to like or share so others can find it when they need it. There is no obligation here, only invitation. What matters most is what happens after the sound fades, when you return to your life, when the familiar appears again, when choices present themselves without commentary. That is where authority proves real. The path ahead is not fully visible, but it is intentional, and you are not walking it unaware anymore.